Hello, everybody. Welcome to Late Night Football. Welcome to our news reaction show. It's not breaking news really anymore, is it? There's been some time to digest it, I've been very conscious about not wanting to comment on this until we got very definitive news. And when it came out from Sky, I was like, okay, I've heard this before. I want to wait a little bit longer. I want to make sure that this is the reality before I jump into any kind of show, before I talk about anything, because you never know. Things have been changing so fluidly. We hear one thing one day, we had that whole day in the summer where it was like, oh, yeah, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. And then, nothing after that. So, I've consciously been quiet about this, but I think now we know that this is a reality, and that Sheikh Jassim has withdrawn his bid to buy Manchester United. Sir Jim Ratcliffe will now most likely be getting 25% of Manchester United, and that will be ratified next week by the Manchester United board. So this is happening. Unfortunately, it is unfortunate for those of us who wanted, Sheikh Jassim to come in, wanted, uber wealthy owners to buy Manchester United. It is disappointing, but at the end of the day, what I will say to anybody who's really upset, who's really sad, who's really angry, what I will tell you, and if this is I don't know if this helps you. I don't know if it doesn't, and it may not even be new news to you. But the reality is, Manchester United were never going to be sold. If you're upset that Manchester United didn't get sold to Sheikh Jassim, it was never going to happen, because we can go back in time and we can talk about this. But I think probably around after that day in the summer, right, when we had that one day, I don't remember what date it was, but there was a one day where news just went crazy. Everybody was like, "Damn, Sheikh Jassim is happening. It's happening. It's happening. It's going to happen. 1 week, 2 weeks." It's going to happen. There was a whole flood of news. And after that, everything went quiet. Everything went radio silent. And I said it as well. I thought it was so weird, because up until that point, every week we were being told, well, something will happen next week. Something will happen next month. Something will happen. It was like that. And then after that whole flood of information, it was radio silent. I think for a month or 2 months, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. There was nothing. It just went completely radio silent. And at that point, I thought, and I said this, I may have said this in the shows where I said, I don't think they're going to buy. I think that something has changed. That day was sort of a watershed moment for the Glazers, because I think that was the day when they got caught, and that was the day when their bluff got caught. Because if you go all the way back, this was never about selling Manchester United. This was always about the Glazers wanting money to fund whatever they needed to fund. Because and to explain this, you've got to go a little bit back to understand what Manchester United means to the Glazers, right? You got to think about it from that perspective. What does Manchester United mean? I'm just going to close this. Yeah. Manchester United means the Glazers. What Manchester United has always meant to the Glazers is, and I'll give an analogy here. Someone like me, and people, average working people like myself, and probably many people who watch the show, you've got your long-term investment accounts, right? You've got your mutual funds, maybe you've got education fund, you've got your stock market investments and all that. Those are your long-term investments, right? You don't take money in and out of that every day. You don't decide today I'm going to take out, in my case as a Canadian, I don't say I'm going to take out $500 today from my investment, from my mutual fund account. Tomorrow I'm going to put in 300 or whatever. Like, you put in money into it, but you don't take money out of it every day for your day-to-day expenses, right? You don't go, well, I need to pay off my credit card, but let me take out 500 from my investment account. You don't do that. You leave it long-term. You leave it. Some days when you have a big expense that you need to make, you take money out of it, or you wait until retirement or whatever. You have your goal until it reaches its goal. You keep it, and you don't touch it, right? That's one part of it. And that's what the Glazers look at. The other investments, the real estate investments, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whatever that that team is called. That's their investment. That's their long-term investment. Those are the ones that they don't touch. They put money into it. They don't take money out of it, right? But then, like me, you've got your savings account, you've got a checking account, you've got your credit card, right? That's what you use for your daily expenses, right? Now let's use the credit card analogy. I have a credit card and I use it, for day-to-day expenses. Never crossing your credit limit though, by the way. But I'm just kidding. But well, actually don't. But yeah, But anyway, you use your credit card, and every couple of weeks or once every half month, when I get my salary, I pay off my credit card bill, right? And then I use my checking account or whatever, where the money goes in, you use that to pay your bill off. That is what Manchester United is to the Glazers. It's their checking account. It's their savings account. Whatever expenses they have in a year, they use Manchester United, the dividends that they get from Manchester United, the consultancy fees that they get from Manchester United, that they give themselves, they use that to pay for their yearly expenses. It's sort of like an ATM, right? You need money, you go to Manchester United to take some money out, and you use it to pay your stuff off. That is what Manchester United has always been to the Glazers. It has always been an ATM, a check. It has never been a long-term investment. It has never been about, and my long-term investments, right? When you put in money into a mutual fund, you're expecting it to grow. You want it to grow. If you put money into your stocks, right? You want it to grow. So what do? You look at the best plans that you want to find, right? You look at the best plans that you can invest in. You look at the best companies, the stocks that you can invest in. You look at that kind of stuff. You do research into that because that's what you want to grow long-term. When you're looking at your credit card, what do you look at? You look, oh, but maybe you look at most. You will look at, well, what gives me a good cashback rate, right? One thing, maybe two things, and that's it. And then you just, and then you just put money in, you take money out. It's a transactional relationship, and that's what Manchester United has always been to the Glazers. It's been a transactional relationship. It has always been about what is the least amount of money that we can put into Manchester United that is going to give us a lot of money, a lot of income. And unfortunately for the Glazers, over the last couple of years, what has happened is that payment plan or that credit card or that checking account has started to run dry. As we have seen, if you go back to last summer, over the last 1 year, some of the decisions that Manchester United have made on the field in terms of player investment has been absolutely abysmal. I think for anybody who has two eyes, and as a brain, can see that Manchester United were running out of cash very, very fast. There was no money. This summer, was shambolic in terms of player transfers. Even January was bad. In fact, even last summer was bad until they, somehow pulled 150 million pounds. Sorry, I was somewhere to kind of buy Casemiro and Antony, but that actually long-term repercussions of that were even worse. To be honest, right now, many fans might be thinking maybe they were better off not doing those deals because the long-term repercussions of those deals are going to be absolutely catastrophic. But nonetheless, right, the fact is that well has been running dry, that account has been running dry. So what they needed a cash injection. They really just wanted a cash injection. They wanted a sucker who could come in and give them a bit of money. £1 billion, whatever, 1.5 billion pounds. Somebody would come in and give them, £1 billion, 1.5 billion pounds. So they have that cash to flow to run, to continue doing what they do. That's basically what they wanted. But they saw what happened with Liverpool, and Liverpool said, we want some external investment. We want 20%. We're willing to sell 20% to someone, and we want to bring someone in. And the fans got upset. Right? The fans went, "What, screw you? You're trying to rob the money. Like basically, you're trying to leverage the club, exploit the club to make money for yourself. Who the fuck do you think you are?" Obviously, they didn't attract many investors because a lot of high value, high net worth investors were like, "We're not going to buy 20%. We want 100%. If we're going to buy, we're going to buy 100%. We're not going to buy 20% of that shit." They're not, right? And those who wanted to buy 20% probably weren't willing to pay the kind of money that Liverpool wanted anyway. So the Glazers thought, you know what? We're going to call it a strategic alternative. We're going to say we're looking at strategic alternatives, including the possibility of a sale. So they never wanted to sell it. They just put that word that the possibility of sale. So then high net worth individuals, the state, the Qatar, Sheikh Jassim, there was a lot of interest from the Middle East investors. But even Sheikh Jassim was one of the vocal bidders. There was Sir Jim Ratcliffe. They all sale. There's possibility of a sale. Let's talk about it. Let's try and get a deal done. Let's try and make a sale happen. So that was what it was all about. It was just using the word sale to get, and it keeps the fans at bay, right? Because when you tell, well, we might consider a sale, then the fans also go, wow, yeah, maybe they will go, right? We all fell into that trap as well. Initially, at least, we all fell into that trap. Some of us wised up later towards the end of the process. And I'm not going to say that was a great achievement. Some of us wised up. Many of us kind of fell for it and went, oh, yeah, maybe the club will be sold. I'm guilty of that as well. I know a year ago, back in December, I think November, December, I was having conversations on Facebook with people going, oh, wow, you know what? These guys will be good owners. These guys will be good owners. God, let's hope we get an uber wealthy owner. We started talking about that because we fell into that trap of thinking, right, the sale is possible. Now, I knew, and a lot of fans knew, that it is going to be a complicated process. It is not going to be simple because we knew that the Glazers, if they were considering a sale, would ask for silly money. They would ask for a lot of money to sell the club, money that many people might not be willing to pay. And, so just because they said they were selling doesn't mean it was going to happen. But what I didn't expect, I'm sure a lot of people didn't expect, is the kind of valuations that were being put out there by the Glazers was entirely designed to dissuade people from selling, right? Because the kind of money that they were asking was the £8 billion. I think they were 8 billion, 10 billion. Those are the kind of numbers the Glazers think that the club is worth. They literally think that the club is worth 8 billion, 10 billion, dollars, pounds, whatever. They think that that's the valuation of the club. It is not. It is not that valuation. There was no smart businessman or businesswoman or business person was going to pay that kind of amount. No, and if anybody did, they were suckers. And I would question their business acumen if they paid that much amount to buy the club. They shouldn't. Nobody should. And for that, I applaud Sheikh Jassim for walking away. When he put in a £5.2 billion bid and he has been rejected, it would have been easy for him to go, right, I'll put in a bit more, I'll put in a bit more. No, he said, screw you, fuck you, I'm out. And I applaud him for that, because that is what good businessmen do. That is what good business people do. They walk away when they know that a deal is not possible. But the Glazers, they already had a sucker. They just wanted a sucker who was going to pay an outrageous amount for 25% of the club. They wanted to stay at the club. They don't want that ATM to go. They don't want that credit card to stop, functioning. All they want is somebody else. The debt on that credit card the payments on that credit card has been too high. So all they wanted was somebody who was going to be willing to put in some money. It was basically someone who could reload that credit card. Basically, they just want somebody to reload that credit card. That was all it was about. It was always about someone who was going to come in and give them a little bit of money to spend all over again on themselves, not on the club, on themselves. That is the key. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe came in. He's like, oh yeah, I'll put Manchester back in Manchester. I'm going to come in. I'll buy 25%. There's a lot of talk as well the fact that he's obviously failed at Nice. He doesn't really want to own Nice. I think Nice was always just a matter of building a portfolio so he could buy another bigger club, and that's what it was. Try to buy Chelsea, didn't work. Try to get some investment in Barcelona, didn't work. Now Manchester United and the Glazers will sell to literally take money from anybody as long as it matches their interests. They will take money from anyone and anywhere. They just wanted money. They just wanted money on their terms. That is what the Glazers wanted. They wanted money on their terms, and as long as anybody was willing to pay it, they were willing to take it. And that is what has happened. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has become a sucker. They have played him like a fiddle. And I'm saying this, and these are predictions, right? In 3 years' time, we will know. But right now, it seems that they played him like a fiddle. They have used his desperation to want to buy a big football club to call himself the owner of a big sports franchise. They have used that desperation to their advantage, and they've got a deal that they should never be getting. And no proper businessman should be doing that, or business person should be doing that kind of deal in any situation, in any scenario. It should just not happen. And yet Sir Jim Ratcliffe has done it, and he has done it out of desperation. Now, and that's what it is. So don't be disappointed that Sheikh Jassim didn't buy it, because he was never going to buy it, because he was never going to be able to buy it unless he put in an £8 billion, £10 billion bid for the club. Unless he put that kind of money in, he was never going to be able to buy the club. It was not going to happen, because they never wanted him to get it. They wanted money on their terms, which was basically them saying, we want control of this club. We don't want to give up control of this club. We want to have a stake in this club. We want to be able to still profit. We don't want to lose our credit card. Our credit card, we still want to keep our credit card. We just want somebody to come in and put some money into it. And Sheikh Jassim has gone, I'm not here to give you money to spend on your credit card. I want that credit card for myself. And I don't want to make it a credit card. I want to make it something else, right? I want that for myself. I don't want this sharing agreement with you. So fuck you, take it or screw or get lost. And that's what the case is. And that's ultimately what it is. Now, what's next for Manchester United? Obviously, I think a lot of people talk about it. I don't want to talk about optimism, because there is nothing to be optimistic about in this situation. But what I will say is that there's not a lot going to happen as well. In the short term, nothing's going to change, right? What should happen now, again, if Ratcliffe is a smart businessman, if he is, what he should be saying is that I'm going to give you £1 billion or whatever. I think he's given them more than £1 billion, because if the valuation was £5.2 billion from Sheikh Jassim, and Ratcliffe has valued them at, I would say, let's assume that he's valued them at £6 billion for simplicity, because the valuation from Ratcliffe is higher, because he's buying a lower amount, so he's paying less, but he's valuing them at a higher amount. So if he's valuing it at $6 billion for simplicity, then he's paying at least 1.5 billion for 25%. 1.5 billion is what he's paid. If Ratcliffe is a smart person, which I don't think he is, he's desperate, but if he was smart, he would be saying, all right, I'm going to give you 1.5 billion for 25%. I want you to use that money to first clear out all the debt. The debt has to go, because the debt is around £1 billion. So 1.5 billion pounds should cover the debt. The debt should be gone. I want the debt. Tomorrow, the debt has to go. I'm giving you this money. This money is not going anywhere. It's going to clear the debt. That's the first thing. I want to clear the debt. And the next 500 million pounds, I want that to be spent on the team over the next 1.5 years. So you spend maybe 200 million pounds in January, 300 million pounds in the summer. That's the breakdown that I want you to do. That is what he should have. I hope, but I doubt it. But this is what I would have done if I was giving somebody 1.5 billion, knowing by the way that this is a very unpopular thing that he has done. At least you do that. You try and say, right, we're doing this. We're going to clear out the debt. We're going to put in investment for the next 18 months. This is what we're going to invest in the club. That's what I would do. Because once you clear the debt, you clear out, a lot of the loan payments. You clear that out, so you could get yourself a lot of money back, and you also clear out a lot of the outstanding payments and things like that. You clearing out the debt is not just giving money to the banks. There's a lot of debt that is a lot of things. That puts a lot of pressure on a lot of different areas. So doing that would be good. And then the 500 million pounds, you put that into the team. You say, right, 200 million pounds in January, 300 million pounds in summer. Let's see what we can do with that money. That's what I would do. But Ratcliffe is not going to do that unless it is kind of contractually written into the contract, and which I'm 100% sure is not happened. I could be wrong, but I'm 100% sure that there's no contractual obligation from the Glazers to use that money for anything related to the club. He's just given them 1.5 billion pounds, and I want 25%, put me on the board, so I can go around brag to my rich friends that I'm now the owner, that now I am a part owner of Manchester United. That is literally all that it is, but that is what I would have done, and that might have given me some optimism. But instead, what is likely to happen, and this is my prediction, I'm not an in the know person, but this is my prediction, what I think will happen is that he's basically gone and given them 1.5 billion pounds. They'll probably use maybe some part of that money. Again, I'm saying 1.5 as an arbitrary number. I don't know what the actual valuation is because we don't know that yet. But I'm using that as an arbitrary number because I'm thinking it should be at least 6 billion, right? That's probably the valuation that they put on it. So they're probably going to use maybe 15-20% of that, if at all. They'll use that to service some of the debts, 15-20%, which will probably not even cover, which will probably cover interest payments at most, but they'll probably use that 15-20% to cover some of the debts, maybe, and the rest of the 80% will go into the dividend fund for the Glazers. They will not take it all at once, but what they will do is they will periodically take money from that as dividends. They will just, that's what it is. They'll just use that as dividend payments. They'll probably say that they're putting it in the club, but they'll just take it out as dividends. Or they might just take all of it shamelessly and say, right, we're keeping it. But this is our money. This is not the club's money. This is our money. So give it to us and we'll keep it. And that's what will happen, right? Because that's really what this was all about. It was always about making sure that the cash flow for the Glazers continues to go, to continue to run, and it was never about the club. It was never about improving the club. Maybe they'll put some money in, they will put some money in infrastructure, things that they'll spend some part of it. When I say 15-20%, maybe they'll spend 30% of it on things around infrastructure and pay debts and all that. They'll do that because they have to, otherwise they're going to be in a lot of trouble and they wouldn't want that. But the majority of that money, I'd be very surprised if anything less than 60-70% of money does not go into the Glazer pockets eventually. It will find its way eventually into the Glazer pockets because that is what it was always about. They just want control. And that's what's going to happen, right? And so nothing's going to change in the short term. The same people will still be running the club. They got just one more person on the board, great, whatever. He's not exactly, he's not exactly a visionary business owner, is he? He's just some guy who's rich, who has a lot of money to spend, and it's an egotistical move from him to want to own a sports franchise. He wants to own Manchester United to be able to brag about it to people. That's literally what this is all about. So that's what it is. He said that in 3 years, hopefully he hopes to buy Manchester United. He wants to buy, and we'll come now to that part of 3 years, because I think a lot of people are talking about 3 years. First of all, here's what it is. I've said that I think the Glazers have played Sir Jim like a fiddle, because they've given him 25%. And they said, now, is it contractually obligated that the Glazers will sell to Sir Jim in 3 years? Is there a contractual obligation? Is there a fixed price amount that has been put in? I'm 100% sure that nothing of that sort. And in 3 years' time, they will negotiate. Right? They'll come back to the negotiating table where Sir Jim will say, right, I want 75% of the club. Right? How much do you want? In 3 years' time, they're going to say, well, you pay 6 billion. So, this is the 10 billion. That's what we want. In 3 years' time, they will ask for 10 billion. A valuation of 10 billion for the club. They will ask a 10 billion valuation for the club, which means that, again, 75% of that at a 10 billion valuation, you're talking 7.5 billion pounds. Does he have 7.5 billion pounds lying around to pay for it? I don't think so, because if he did, he would have bought the whole club now, right? So I don't think that will happen. So, it's like saying, a lot of people think the price of the value of the club will not be 5 or 6 billion. It will go up. It will go up, because unless the club gets relegated, right, as long as they're in the Premier League, the value of the Premier League keeps going up. The value of the Premier League doesn't go low, it goes higher. And so as long as they're in the Premier League, the valuation of the club will always grow, because the valuation of the Premier League will grow. Revenues will continue to grow, right? The only thing that maybe impacts it a little bit is the Champions League, being in the Champions League, not being in the Champions League. That makes a little bit difference. But at this point, United are not a factor in winning. They're not going to win the Champions League anytime soon. They're not going to be a European powerhouse anytime soon. And I think the Glazers have kind of not accepted that. I wouldn't say accepted because they don't care about it, but they've kind of said, right, that being in Europe, not being in Europe, that's fine. It won't affect our value. Like, they've accepted that part, that we cannot base our valuation whether we're in Europe or not, because we're not a club that operates on that level, and that's fine, right? But they will say, we're in the Premier League, we're a Premier League club, we want, we make a lot of money, because they will make a lot of money. Manchester United will continue to make a lot of money. They are not making as much as they used to, and certain brands will support them. Many brands obviously don't pay them as well as they used to, but many brands do. and there's still many untapped markets that Manchester United could get into. So I see the valuation going up, and I see it going. I can very well see them asking for £10 billion as a valuation from Sir Jim, Ratcliffe in 3 years. They'll say we want 10 billion, and Ratcliffe will go, oh, what? And whether he can pay it, does he have 7.5 billion lying around to pay for the club? I don't know. I don't think so. But even if he pays, he's apparently worth about 11-12 billion pounds. Right, so let's assume he improves his value by 50%, which is very optimistic, by the way. But let's say his value, his net worth increases by about 50%, which is probably, you say, 16 billion pounds. You pay 7.5 billion pounds out of that, you're already halfway. Half of your net worth is already gone. It's already gone into the club. And what money do you have? And it's not like net worth. The net worth doesn't mean you have spendable cash. It just means total value for assets. How much of that is actually expendable cash that he has? And some are saying, and of course, he'll probably use money from Ineos to buy the club. Will Ineos be in the club? Probably not. But then it's a loan from Ineos. Now, yes, he cannot put the loan on Manchester United because those are the new rules. But even so, it's loan that he will have to pay. And how is he going to pay that? It's probably through Manchester United. So, I mean, it's a thing where I would say that I don't think things are going to change with this ownership. I don't think anything is going to change with this. I think it's status quo, and that's what the Glazers always wanted. It was status quo, just with a little bit more money for them to be able to, spend on themselves. That is literally what this whole process was about. It took a year because they had to mislead people. Some people thought that they might actually sell it, so they had to go through those processes of like making it look like they were trying to sell it to give the fans on side. What really happened was they just kept asking for ridiculous, outrageous sums, and really ultimately it was all about using Qatar to drive up Jim Ratcliffe. Right? And this is what it is why I talk about that one day in the summer, because that was the day when all hell broke loose, because that was the day when Sheikh Jassim is buying the club. And I think that was the moment when both Qatar and Ratcliffe kind of caught on to what the Glazers were attempting to do. It was basically one-upsmanship. It was basically trying to say, and I think I put this in a video where I said, so Jim, Qatar are paying 3 billion. How much are you paying? 3.2. All right, you know what? 3.2. Yeah, we can work with that. Hey, Jassim, Jim just said he's paying 3.2. How much are you paying? We'll go to him if you don't give us 3.4. Give us 3.4, we'll come back to you. And it was still doing that. And I think on that one day, it just went all hell, because I think Ratcliffe, because their preferred choice was always Ratcliffe. It was never Jassim. It was always Ratcliffe. And I think that day, when shit hit the fan, when people went, why Sheikh Jassim, Sheikh Jassim, Sheikh Jassim, it's happening. Ratcliffe went, why are you negotiating with Jassim? I thought I'm the guy you want. Why are you negotiating with Jassim? Is this happening? I'm pulling out right now if I don't get clarity. And I think they went, no. We're not, okay, no. We're not trying to sell to Jassim. We still think that, your bid is good. No. And then they stopped. And that's when they stopped. They completely killed it, because they were like, right, these guys have caught on to what we're doing. Let's kill it. I don't want any more. We don't want any more leaks going on. We don't want any more pressure being built through social media and media. Just shut it down. And shut it down because they didn't want to. Because they didn't want that spark to go, right? And maybe I'm not explaining it properly, but if you've been in any kind of auction or kind of, if you've been in any kind of situation where you're trying to play one side to get the other side to give you more money or to give you more of what you want, you will know what I'm talking about. It was basically a way, because they knew that they had a sucker in Jim Ratcliffe, and it was all about making sure that Jim Ratcliffe was going to pay a lot of money. Now, they wouldn't have minded if Jassim was some dumbass who was willing to pay 10 billion pounds for the club. They would have taken that money and laughed all the way to the bank. They wouldn't have minded that. But that was unrealistic. Jassim is a good businessman who was not going to do that, right? So that was that. So they knew that the only sucker was Jim Ratcliffe, and the point was to get him to overpay to a ridiculous valuation, and on ridiculous terms as well. Forget the valuation. So it was so ridiculous to think that somebody who wanted to buy the club now is okay with 25% and paying so much money for nothing. Right? What does he get? A seat on the board? What does that give him? What kind of powers does he have? We need to know all these details. We're never going to get these days. Well, I'll tell you, he doesn't have a lot of power. The Glazers still own majority. Right? They're still, yes, okay, so maybe, Jim Ratcliffe is now the majority stakeholder, the single majority stakeholder, but the Glazers still have power. They still have about 40-46% of the shares, right? If my math is not off, then it's 25 plus 31 is about 56. So the Glazers still have majority, and don't forget, Glazers have Class A shares. So 31% doesn't have a lot of voting rights. It's the 79% that have the voting rights, and the Glazers still together, they still have the majority of the voting rights. And so as long as they're all together on something, they can still overrule the Ratcliffe. So Ratcliffe really has nothing. He has nothing at the end of the day, but he's been willing to give it all because of ego and because of a desperation. And the Glazers have taken advantage of that desperation, and they have made him overpay for something that never really should have been that way. But he will learn from this. He will learn a terrible lesson from this, because for one, he's been taken advantage of by the Glazers. For two, the majority of the fan base is not happy about it, from what I can tell. There's A lot of fans not happy about this. So he's got the fans on. He spent money on something that even the fans don't want him to. The fans didn't want him. They didn't want him to be spending money like that, but he spent money on something that ultimately is ridiculous. So he's gotten crushed from both sides, and he will have to learn a very terrible lesson from this. I think it will not end well for him. Whichever way, I don't think it will end well for him. But that's in the long term. I think in the short term, like I said, maybe there'll be some spending in January. Maybe they'll put in a bit of money in January to kind of buy maybe 1 or 2 players. Big name players that the club do not need. Ideally, big name players that the club do not need, because that's how they operate. Right? Get somebody, big name who's get in somebody and make the fans happy. But they're not really going to buy players that the club needs. Probably, maybe they will. They'll spend some money maybe in January again just to keep fans on side. But long term, I would say, medium term, I would say nothing's going to change. Long term is something that remains to be seen, but I am not optimistic about the long term with Jim Ratcliffe, because for one, he has proven himself to be a dumbass when it comes to business, and that's the first thing. You need to be a good businessman, and he's proven that he's not. And on top of that, he does not seem very bright. Let's just be honest. When it comes to football, he has just been played by the Glazers, so clearly he's not that bright. And on top of that, beyond that, I think the amount of money that he's gonna have to sink into this to be able to own the club, he's not going to have a lot left to work with. Then his track record is pretty bad as well with Nice, right? The track record has not been good, so there's not a lot that you can be optimistic about when it comes to ownership of Manchester United, and that is what it is. Fan protests, it has to happen. I hope it happens. I hope that the Manchester derby is the next game. If Manchester United fans, and I'm saying this as someone who's sitting in Toronto, in Canada, and who's not going to be a part of this in any way in person, I'm more than happy to support any protest online, but I will not be able to do this in person because I don't have the money to do this. But what needs to happen for match-going fans, if match-going fans are serious about this, if Manchester United fans in the Manchester area at least, or those who are going to be in that area on that day are serious about it, boycott is not going to work. Protest is not going to work. You need to shut that game down. That game needs to be shut down. That game should not go ahead. Manchester United should have to forfeit that game. That game should not go ahead. It has got to be. The problem is with protests like these, they tend to go violent, and then things go bad, right? And I'm not someone who condones violence, and I don't like violence. So I hope that if there is a protest of that scale, that it doesn't go violent. But unfortunately, they do go violent. And the way to mitigate that is to tell people who, they don't bring your kids there, or don't, elderly people don't go there. But then if you tell them, it becomes public knowledge, and then, the Glazers can prepare. So the shock and awe factor also has to be there. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done. I think Manchester United as a fan base, and I will point this out as well. You think about it, how many Everton were sick and tired of their owners, and they worked tirelessly to get him out. And finally he left the club. He went. He said, fuck it, I'm out of this. I don't want this shit. He's out. He's gone. Where the Everton fans got new owners, or what they got new owners, right? Because the owners took over. It does not mean the club is suddenly going to become a world-class club, but at least they got their owners out because they wanted to, and they did that, right? Manchester United have been trying to get their owners out for the last 18 years, and it hasn't happened. Surely somewhere as a fan base, we have failed. We have failed as a fan base because, we've not been able to do it. And that is something as a reflection for the fan base as well, as to how this has been allowed to happen. How this has been allowed to go on. Where, and this is something you can learn from other clubs as well. But for some reason, and I've heard things about divisions in the fan base, about all of that. But that's the part of the thing that we need to solve as a fan base. We need to make sure that we're all in this together, and we make things happen. Whether, we are in Manchester, whether we are in some other part of the world, surely there's, everybody wants what's best for the club. But it's a whole thing, right? Personal interests, things like that always come in. But anyway, so I'll end by saying this, as I started this, the fact is, don't be upset, because being upset solves nothing, because there was nothing to be upset about, because what we wanted to happen was never going to happen, because it was never part of the plan. The plan was always what is now unfolding, which is to find a sucker who was going to be willing to give money to the Glazers to be able to continue what they were doing in terms of destroying the club. That was always the case. So don't be upset, because it is pointless, right? On the other hand, I am upset, and I am saying this a little bit to console myself as well, but take that as for what it's worth, right? Don't be upset about it, because there's nothing to be upset about, because it's not like somebody came in with a bid and then it just fell through because, somebody couldn't pass the checks and balances test, or, failed a fit and proper person's test. All those things didn't happen. You could be upset about that, but you can't be upset about the fact that the owners decided, not that they decided, but the owners stuck with what their plan was, which was they never wanted to sell the club. And this was always about, let's just find a sucker who's going to give us money. That's ultimately what it is, right? So Right, take it for that. Anyway, share your thoughts. You know, I know we're a little bit late, but I really didn't want to take some time to process things. You know, I know it's been a bit of a long video as well, but again, I really just wanted to process things, to think through what I was saying, what I was talking about, because this is a sensitive topic. It's a very difficult topic to talk about for a lot of people. It is a very charged topic as well. So I did want to take some time before I came on and talked about it. So, but you know, share your thoughts. I always love to hear your comments. Maybe you don't agree with me. Maybe you agree with me. I would love to hear your thoughts. Do smash like on this video if you enjoyed it, and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.